Urban wars.
Before the sun rose over Rio de Janeiro, a plan had already been set in motion. 2 months of planning, 1 year of intelligence gathering, and a tactic never before attempted in Brazilian history. They called it the Bope Wall, and by the end of the day, it would become the deadliest police operation Brazil had ever seen. The targets were the Complexo do Lemo and Penha, a network of favelas housing over 300,000 people, but the true objective was the Serra da Misericórdia, a forested ridge connecting the two communities that intelligence reports had identified as the headquarters of the Comando Vermelho, Brazil's most powerful criminal faction. The Comando Vermelho, or Red Command, had evolved far beyond a drug gang. According to Rio's security secretary, they had former military and police in their ranks. They built concrete barricades, electrified fortifications, and operated with the structure of a paramilitary organization. They were no longer just criminals. They were a parallel. For 60 days, intelligence teams mapped every entrance, every escape route, every possible firing position. Drones flew over the Serra da Misericórdia, capturing images of armed men in camouflage, standing in formation like a military platoon. The police knew exactly where the Red Command's leadership would be. The question was, how to trap them. Unknown to the public, a shipment of 20 American-made sniper rifles had arrived in Rio months earlier. They were manufactured by Daniel Defense in Georgia, approved by the U.S. State Department despite objections from the American ambassador to Brazil. Now, they were in the hands of Bope, and they were about to be used. The strategy was unprecedented. Instead of fighting the criminals inside the dense urban maze, where they had the advantage, police would push them into the forest. Colonel Marcelo de Menezes, the secretary of the military police, explained it simply: we created a Bope wall. In the early morning darkness, 2,500 agents moved into position, the largest mobilization in Rio's history. Bope, the elite special forces unit, took the lead. Their mission: climb the Serra da Misericórdia, establish a defensive line on the ridge, and wait. While other units sealed the entrances below, Bope moved through the forest in silence. The Serra da Misericórdia was the criminals' escape route, a maze of trails they had used for years. Tonight, it would become their trap. At first light, the first shots rang out. Police units at the base of the communities began serving arrest warrants. The Red Command responded immediately. Heavy gunfire echoed across the hillsides. The criminals fought back with a weapon rarely seen in urban conflict: drones equipped with explosives. From their positions inside the favelas, they launched small unmanned aircraft toward police lines. Some reached their targets. Others fell on civilian areas. The battle had entered a new dimension. As the battle intensified inside the favelas, the Red Command unleashed a coordinated campaign of urban terror across Rio. Buses and trucks were hijacked and used as barricades. Major highways, the Linha Amarela, the Avenida Brasil, the Grajão de Crepágua, were blocked in multiple locations. The city of 6 million people was being held hostage. The plan worked. Pushed from their urban strongholds, the criminals fled toward the forest, and directly into the Bope wall waiting on the ridge. What happened next would be debated for months. For hours, the forest echoed with gunfire. Bope engaged the fleeing criminals. The fighting was close, chaotic, brutal. In the dense vegetation, there were no clear lines, no civilians to witness, only the sounds of war. 4 officers did not return: 2 from Bope, 2 from civil police. SGT Gonalves had served since 2008, leaving behind a wife and daughter. SGT Fonseca, since 2011, leaving a wife, 2 children, and a stepson. Their comrades would carry them from the forest. The operation would continue. When the shooting stopped, the bodies remained. Dozens of them. Some reports said 72. Others said more. But the official count would take days to finalize. And the story was only beginning. In the hours after the battle, residents entered the forest. What they found would horrify the nation. Dozens of bodies, some with gunshot wounds, others with knife wounds, some with their hands tied. One body was found without its head, the head brought separately in a plastic. The residents of Penha did not wait for official investigators. They carried the bodies from the forest themselves, laying them in Praso Lucas. By mid-morning, 62 bodies lay in the square, then 70, then more. The official death toll would eventually reach between 121 and 138. In the square, mothers searched for sons. One woman, finding her 20-year-old son, said his wrists were bound. When she found him in the forest, there was time to help him, she said. Another body held grass in its hands, fingers frozen in death. The image would become a symbol of the operation's brutality. The government's official numbers told only part of the story: 121 dead, they said. 4 police, 81 arrested, 100 rifles seized. The deadliest police operation in Rio's history. But the controversy was just beginning. The handling of the bodies immediately drew international condemnation. Human rights groups noted that forensic experts did not examine the scenes where the deaths occurred. The chain of custody for evidence was broken when residents removed bodies before investigators arrived. For critics, this was not incompetence. It was a deliberate attempt to obscure what happened in the forest. The United Nations experts called for an independent investigation. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights was petitioned to send international observers. Amnesty International released a statement condemning apparent extrajudicial executions, but the government's response was defiant. Secretary Menezes rejected the criticism. "We are facing narco-terrorists with military training," he said. "Those who surrendered were arrested. Those who fought were engaged. This is not a crisis, it is a turning point." The battle for public opinion had begun. Days after the operation, a Reuters investigation revealed something the Brazilian government had not disclosed. The Bope unit at the center of the operation had purchased 20 sniper rifles from an American manufacturer, Daniel Defense of Georgia, in a deal approved by the U.S. government despite objections from the American ambassador to Brazil. In January 2024, U.S. Ambassador Elizabeth Bagley formally objected to the sale. A State Department memo from that time described Bope as among the most notorious police units in Brazil in regard to killings of civilians. But the sale went through anyway. The deal was championed by Ricardo Pita, then a congressional staffer and now a senior State Department official in the Trump administration. Pita visited a Bope facility in Rio, then pushed diplomats to approve the sale. Some officials were surprised at how persistently he advocated for a transaction worth only $150,000. The Biden administration had imposed stricter human rights restrictions on gun exports. In April 2025, President Trump rescinded those restrictions. A State Department spokesperson told Reuters, "The previous administration's disastrous foreign policies aided and abetted our hemisphere's most violent gangs. We are committed to ensuring our partners have what they need to fight vicious criminals." Reuters could not confirm whether the American rifles were used in the October 28 operation, but the timing was undeniable. The weapons arrived in 2024. The operation was 1 year later, and the world was left to wonder who pulled the trigger and whose finger was on the approval. Despite the international condemnation, the operation was popular. A nationwide poll showed 55% of Brazilians backed the police action, with support rising to 62% among Rio residents. For a population terrorized by organized crime, the battle was a sign that the state was finally fighting back. The operation became a political battleground. Governor Claudio Castro criticized the federal government, claiming he had requested military support 3 times and been denied. "We are alone against organized crime," he said. President Lula refused to send the armed forces, stating the governor had not proven the local forces were overwhelmed. The rift between Brasilia and Rio deepened. For military analysts, the operation offered lessons. The Bope Wall demonstrated how terrain could be used to deny escape routes. Drone surveillance provided intelligence never before available. The coordination between 2,500 agents across multiple agencies was unprecedented. But the high death toll raised questions about proportionality. These questions would linger long after the bodies were buried. Human rights groups demanded independent investigations. The government called the operation a necessary response to a criminal army, and the families of the dead waited for answers that might never come. Rio de Janeiro, October 28, 2025. A day that began with a tactical plan, ended with 121 dead, and a nation divided. The Bope Wall had worked exactly as designed. The criminals were trapped. The leadership of the Comando Vermelho was dealt a devastating blow, but the cost was measured not just in bodies, but in the erosion of trust between communities and the state. In urban warfare, victory is never clean, and in Rio, the war continues. The forest holds its secrets, the mothers hold their grief, and the city waits for the next battle, knowing it will come. Because in Rio, the war for the favelas never truly ends.
Did you like the story? Subscribe to the channel and give it a like. See you soon.